everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right there is Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
Hi, Nikki Kinzer.
How are you?
Well, I'm here, and I'm on time.
Good.
Right? This is
I was
on my
on time,
schedule.
but then I was on time, but I made you late.
No, see, now you're pulling back the curtain. I was trying to make a gag on our show title today, right? And you just told the truth and made us look late.
No, actually, though, this is good because it actually all goes in together. Or it all flows, right? Because you're here, I was here, but then I was late because I was having technical difficulty, which means we have to be flexible with our schedule going forward.
Oh, see what you did there? You brought it back around. I love that so much.
Thank you very much.
We are talking about ADHD time today. Thank you to a listener who wrote in with all sorts of questions, and we're going to talk about why sticking to a schedule is so hard. Before we do that, head over to takecontroladhd.com, get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website or subscribe to the mailing list and get an email each time an episode is released. You can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD. And if anything that we've done over the last 7 years has touched you in any way, shape, or form, we sure appreciate you considering supporting us monetarily over at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. Support us on Patreon. You get access to all sorts of new goodies, access to our Discord group where you can live chat with wonderful ADHD people from all over the world. It has become an incredibly valuable community to me, and I know to others there, and we sure wish you would join us there. You actually can join us for free and get into the global chat. And if you support us on Patreon, you can actually get access to even more stuff like weekly or monthly workshops from me and Nikki, including the library of workshops that Nikki has already produced and is releasing over there, in addition to all sorts of great channels. It's just a great resource to learn. So help us out over there, patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. And I think that's all the news. Do we have any news, any events coming up that I'm going to miss?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
All right. So let's talk about it. Listener email came in to talk to us, ask us about ADHD time.
Yes. And why sticking to a schedule is so hard.
Truth.
So what I'm going to have you do, because you have the great Casey Kasem voice.
Casey Kasem.
Yes. I'm going to have you read her inquiry.
Okay.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down into little sections and talk about the different sections of it.
All right. Here we go then. I will commence the reading. I am 27 and was recently diagnosed. I'm in college online. I run a new and struggling photography business, so my days are all spent at home, minus errands, and live with my husband. I struggle most with sticking to my own plans. I'll spend hours or days coming up with a good schedule for my days and weeks that incorporates work, school, dates, and time with my husband, cooking healthy food, exercise, and downtime. But when it comes to just sticking with it, it's like I rebel against myself. I think I'm motivated. I feel motivated most of the time. I just never want to do what it is that's next. I'll end up doing something else, sometimes something productive and other times not, and getting sucked into hyperfocus and can't tear myself away. I've tried setting timers and reminders on my phone, but I just silence them and continue. Most days I barely even eat, and trying to get myself to exercise is like pulling teeth. Anyway, always an excuse. Recently I came up with my latest great schedule and asked my husband to be my accountability partner for a few weeks until I can get into a groove, possibly longer as needed. But I've already begun to lie to him about how I'm spending my time and why. I just feel hopeless, and I'm not sure what to do or how to get myself to cooperate. It's like I'm trying to drive the car, but I'm being overrun by a rogue autopilot. Any advice? Oh, dear.
Packed with a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, it really is. And my goodness, that feels familiar.
Yes. This was a really good, I think she really explained herself nicely, because I have a feeling that many people will relate to what she's saying and how she's feeling. Especially when you do put the effort into taking so much time to plan and thinking you're doing this great thing, because you are. It's just that I'm going to break down a little bit of what I see maybe going on.
Okay.
And see if we can help her and others. Okay, so sticking to the plan. So what I'm going to do is like I said, I'm going to break this question down a little bit into some of the core issues that I'm seeing.
Okay.
Sticking to the plan, she's rebelling against it. She's resisting against it. So this is definitely something that I just was talking to one of my coaching groups about, is resistance of why we feel this resistance to things that we know we should be doing or what we've planned. So I think what she's feeling is definitely a very much an ADHD characteristic. It is part of her ADHD. So I want to make sure that she understands that it's not something that she necessarily needs to fix. It's more something that she needs to kind of recognize and work with.
Oh,
right?
that's really important. And I think that's something that people forget. They think that the feeling, the emotional baggage that comes with the symptoms of ADHD, it's not just you, right?
Yeah.
Like not able to cope with ADHD. It is ADHD.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal because now we see that there's a separation between you and the symptoms. Right. Absolutely. So what she's feeling is very normal. All right. So planning and structure is really kind of a love-hate relationship with ADHD, right?
Yeah.
It's something that we know we want to do. It's something that can help us stay focused, but there's also this resistance that we've been talking about. And if we don't have a plan at all, then that can be a huge disaster as well, because then we're treading water all the time and we're just in reactive mode all day.
Right.
So a plan can lead to disappointment if it doesn't work out. Again, kind of blaming yourself, but it can also lead into something good if we're more flexible with it. And we're going to talk about the flexibility around planning here in just a second. So let's identify what you're resisting. And we don't want to take your first answer at face value. So if I was to ask her, what are you resisting about this plan? Whatever she says to me first, I don't want to really put too much account in. Like I want to dig in a little deeper and find out, okay, so what's the emotional piece that's holding you back? What are you afraid of? What's going on here? Are you resisting the whole plan, or are you just resisting pieces of it? Because we could be getting into all or nothing thinking that if not, right? If there's just pieces of it that work, you may get stuck in thinking that none of it works because the whole plan doesn't work.
Which is a very natural all or nothing kind of response for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So what makes having a plan matter in the first place? So once we've kind of dug in a little deeper to figure out what's holding you back from this plan, what are the benefits? How is this going to help you during the day or in the evening? And what parts of it are going to help you the most? Because one of the things that I see with ADDers is they get too detail oriented. They try to plan too much. They try to get too many details, which can be very overwhelming. So can we scale that back? Can we maybe not have every hour planned, but maybe we have blocks or, there's just different things that we can do to kind of work around it.
Right.
This is the biggest thing, I think, with planning, is we have to shift our plan to be an ADHD plan.
Not in this case, it's not your husband's plan. It's not how your husband would plan. It's likely not even in a parallel universe to how your husband might plan. It's how you have to plan for your own brain.
And it has to be flexible. It has to be movable.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest key, is that if you go into it thinking that you have to get this thing done at this time and you don't feel like doing it, that's going to set you up for failure, right? Because there's going to always be that resistance, because again, it's the ADHD coming in.
Yeah.
It's going to fight you.
Right.
And so how can we make it not so bad? Well, we got to make the plan more movable. We have to make sure that we know it's a work in progress. This is not concrete, right? We can go away from it and it's okay. I haven't done anything wrong. We want to add buffer time. We want to make sure that we're having space in our calendar, because we're going to need it. Because again, ADHD is with you. So you could be getting distracted in ways that you're not even aware of, and you're going to need that buffer time. So you don't want to schedule back to back, back to back. That's not going to help your ADHD. She's adding a lot of new things at once. And that was the first thing that I noticed is, I'm trying to, let me go back and look. Okay. I'm trying to incorporate work, school, dates, time with my husband, cooking. healthy food, exercise, downtime. That is a lot of stuff to be putting into a schedule if you're not used to having a plan work for you.
Right. Which is, it's great. It's aspirational. And sometimes,
Absolutely.
again, that all or nothing thinking, we sometimes think, well, this is what my life needs to look like. So I'm going to make it look like that today.
Yes.
And
yeah,
that's a recipe for disaster.
Yes, because it works for one day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then the next day you feel bad because it didn't happen. So lots of things going on there. And what I would suggest is that we practice planning maybe 1 or 2 things at a time and see how that works for you. Again, we have to make this an ADHD plan for you, and it has to be movable. And so you can add more as you're comfortable and you're feeling good.
Well, yeah, and I totally see that too, because that's how I live on my calendar, which is movable, right? Everything that's on there I can move around, and I feel like I'm a very tactile person, and so for me being able to touch that bit of data and move it to another place is me exercising my power over myself, over my brain. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of a weird way to think about it, I guess.
Well, I like it.
That's me.
I like it. So practicing, 1 or 2 things and seeing how it goes. Okay. So here we want to talk about the motivation. So she was talking about, I think I'm motivated. I just never want to do what's next. And then she finds herself getting sucked into hyper focus. Well, this is what I'm going to ask, is that I want her to reevaluate her motivation after she has shifted the way that she thinks about planning.
Yeah. Can I interject something here? Because I think that's really important. I think as ADHDers, this is my hypothesis, my theory.
Oh, give it. Yeah. Yes.
That we may think we know what it feels like to feel motivated, but we don't know what it feels like to be motivated very often, right? I have a sense of what it feels like to be motivated because I may have experienced in the past, or good Lord, I watch people around me who are motivated and who are productive. But most of the time I get a sense of of kind of the mask of motivation that sometimes I have to wear, the mask of productivity that I have to wear because my systems are frail or failing. And that's the part that I think if we don't stop and say, okay, and I love how she said it. I think I feel motivated, right? I'm like on the cusp of something great, but
it feels like
it ends up,
right.
It's just, I have a mask on. And once I pull that mask off, it's not significant. It's not rooted in anything. It's just vapor. It's just lost time.
And I think that's a good point. We think we know.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is reevaluate this after you've made this shift too, because it may feel different. It may not feel as rigid, right? Like maybe you don't have to be as motivated as you think you need to be to get started on something when you feel more empowered about making that decision yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because that I think that's what it comes down to, is if you can create an ADHD plan that's movable and you feel good about it, then you empower yourself to make the decision on what you want to do during that time. It's your schedule. It's your life. You're the only person in charge of it. You get to choose and not feel bad about it.
Yeah. And that gets you out from under the weight of feeling like you're lying to your husband about, because who are you lying to? I mean, you're lying really first and foremost to yourself about how you're spending your time. And one of the greatest and again, most difficult things for me is, we've talked about kind of my habits around food that I've been breaking, right? And how I feel about just diet and exercise and all that stuff. And one of the best things that I've ever done in motivating myself to make change in my life is figuring out how to not lie to my wife about, what I eat when I leave the house. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if I can come home and say those things out loud, that I had a crappy day today. I had a crappy day. Or I was not productive today. Yet another little side story, if I may. Can I?
Yes,
do you mind?
please.
I have the floor. Here's the thing. I was talking to my friend and colleague, this psychotherapist, Dodge Ray, that we've talked about before, and he said I made some comment about something like my variant of ADHD or whatever, how I've learned to accommodate sort of myself with ADHD, and his response was I thought very interesting. He said, he said, I'd give anything to have your kind of ADHD. Like, you seem like you have it all under control. And I said, you don't see it when it fails, because my ADHD is the kind of ADHD that is unforgivably and unrepentantly organized, right? Like, the dopamine hit for me that becomes so satisfying is in implementing new tools and accommodations around my own ADHD. But what you don't see is me having 40 hours of billable work at the end of a week and only billing 2, because I ended up setting up so many systems and living in 5 different to-do applications and duplicating hundreds of tasks across all of them so that I could see which one I like the most. That's my ADHD, and it sucks. And it's terrible, because on the surface, it feels like something that I've got. I know the ins and outs of all these systems, but deep down, I feel like I have to lie about my time on these terrible weeks. And that is the thing where I really connect to this email, and where it really feels like we're plumbing the depths of what it feels like to feel like you have to judge yourself against some impossible norm.
Well, and it's interesting because you bring up the point, too, of not only this impossible norm, but judging yourself against other people that have ADHD.
Yeah.
Right? Because you see something and you think that that's immediately, oh, well, they're doing well. Why can't I?
Exactly.
They graduated from college. Why is it so hard for me?
Stop comparing.
Well, stop comparing. And really, just like you said, you really don't know. Like, that person could have really had a hard time too. We don't know. It's like, it looks good because they got the degree, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it means something, but you know what I mean? I'm saying mean several times.
That's all right. It means something.
It means something. Yeah, there you go. Well, I do want to talk about the accountability choice that she had, which was her husband. So she tries 2 different strategies, right? So she talks about the alarms and timers, and then she talks about the accountability partner.
Right.
So these are 2 great strategies. And they're actually 2 really important strategies that ADDers probably will find more success more often than not when they have these things in play, especially the timers and alarms. And the accountability partner is just as important too. So let me talk about how they can be tweaked. So timers and alarms, I really feel, are essential for the life of an ADDer. Because you cannot rely on your working memory.
Yeah.
It's just not fair. Right? It's just not fair. So what we want to do is we want to change, again, the mindset around what these are. They're little flexible pokes is what I'm going to call them. Because they're there to remind you that you got to do something, right? But if you keep ignoring them, you're not using them correctly. So you got to either use them less or change the time that you're being reminded. If it's really important, then we're going to go back to the idea from Ari Tuckman in his book when we talked about perspective memory. You snooze it. So you keep snoozing it until you do it. So there's just timers and alarms work. You just got to have them work for you. So go ahead. You have something to say.
I do. This is a challenge only insofar as when you have acclimated, I'll use that word because it's sort of kind, right? Like it's like we've just changed altitude a little bit and our bodies are now adjusted to it. When you've acclimated to your alarms and you've absorbed them into the back of your mind, and that muscle memory you have trained falsely to be the thing that you ignore, you press stop on your alarm instead of snooze. That's a muscle that you've developed. And I don't necessarily want to say that, you're broken at this point. Like that's not it. You can always retrain yourself. But the real question is how. Like, what is it like you're saying right now, Nick? You've got to change something, change one element about how you're using the alarm that's going to force you into a new model. And that's, I think, the thing that feels so overwhelming when we hear this all the time. You guys say use alarms. I use alarms and I just ignore the alarms. The easiest thing to do is to ignore the alarm. So how do you change this habit when you are already in the space of being acclimated to your alarms? So they've lost meaning.
Great question. So here, the alarm is a tool for you to remind yourself to do something. So what we have to do is take it a step before you're getting to the reminder. What is it that you have to do? And why are you resisting it?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So if you continue to put the alarm off, put it off, you're resisting this task for some reason.
Oh, you know what? I just love the way you're saying that, because that's usually the things I have to set an alarm for, the things I don't want to do.
Right.
Right. The things that I don't want to change from what I'm currently doing to do this other thing. And so I'm going to set an alarm to remind me to do it, because how great that'll be. But mostly I still have to get over the hump of why I don't want to do that thing I'm trying to remind myself.
Because the alarm is just reminding you to do it. It's not the alarm's fault that
mostly
you're not
it is.
doing.
Let's be clear. Those stupid alarms, it's all their fault.
It's not their fault. They are just a tool.
They are a tool.
That you are being used. I know they're a stupid tool, but I do think you got to figure out deeper. You got to go in deeper and really figure out, what is it about this that I'm resisting? And is it important enough to have it on a daily reminder or whatever, right? Is the alarm is it poking you at the right time? Is it poking you too many times?
Right.
Like, you got to think about being a little more strategic about it.
But also, I love that. Ask that question. What is it about this next thing that I don't want to do so badly? The easy stuff is, I got to put bread in the oven or something when the oven's preheated. That's a little alarm that's going to go off. Super easy for me to break what I'm doing right now. Go in and put the bread in the oven. But an alarm that says, hey, Pete, dummy, you need to stop what you're doing now and do your invoicing for the month. That's a disaster, right? Like, that's a thing that I usually don't want to do.
And you know what? I kind of feel like that's probably not the right way to use the alarm.
Yes.
Because, I look at, like, my husband has an alarm every day that goes off at 2:40.
For what?
Monday through Friday, because he picks up the kids.
Okay.
Well, when that alarm goes off, he doesn't ignore it.
Right. He leaves because the kids are going to wait for him. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you talk about something like invoicing, yeah, for sure. Why are you going to want to stop and do that when you don't want to do it?
Right.
And you're kind of having fun doing whatever it is that you're doing. So the alarm is not being used. It's not the right tool at that point. Right. So we got to figure out something other than that. Probably.
And ask the question, what is it about bookkeeping tasks? I mean, bookkeeping is the foundation of my business, right? It's what keeps food on the table. What is it about that task that I don't like?
Right.
That's hard for me to get at. And going through, like, I ask myself that question every single time it comes around. What is it about that? Like, that's one of those things I feel like I need to work through in order to get to the other side of having the alarm go off and making it feel like bread is in the oven. I need to actually go and want to do that task. What is that? How do you reframe that? So, it's a rhetorical question now, but it's an important act of rhetoric that I think is important for us to think about.
Well, and there's other ways to remind yourself that isn't with a timer or an alarm too. So they're not the only reminders. I mean, you can use sticky notes. You can use a picture that represents something. You can, have somebody tell you, remind you, like a person, right? And we'll talk about accountability partner in just a second. So there are other ways to remind you to do something that doesn't necessarily have a timer or alarm to it. So yes, we want to be kind of choosy about how we use those, but they do work. That's what I want to say. They do work if you're using them right. Okay. Accountability partner. She needs to choose a different one. Just going to throw that out there.
Okay. Not the husband.
The husband is never a good accountability partner for anything.
He's doing it wrong.
And that's not true for everyone. I get it. But, I'm on a health journey too. And the last person who's going to be my accountability partner is my husband for a couple of reasons. One is that he loves me too much. And so he's either going to be really easy on me or he's going to think, oh, she really wants my help. So then he'll be really hard on me and then I'm going to be upset. So it's just not a good thing. My guess is that she's lying about this because, she's embarrassed. She's ashamed. Mm-hmm. And those are all, very real feelings to feel, especially when you have your ADHD getting in the way of this. But I think your husband's too close to the situation. So I would choose a different accountability partner. Maybe if you can, another ADDer, right? Because I think that is probably really awesome because you're going to have someone who doesn't feel any judgment from you, about you, right? It's going to be a very helpful, supportive relationship.
Right. If I may be so bold, jump into the Discord group at the ADHD podcast because that's where that happens. The ADHD accountability channel is your new home.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that is a great idea. And I wasn't even thinking about that, Pete. So thank you for putting that in there. But that's the thing is that you really probably want to choose somebody that's not quite so close to you so that you don't feel the need to be ashamed or embarrassed, that you can just lay it out there. Right. It's not healthy for your marriage. And this goes back to what you were saying. You're not helping yourself if you're not really honest about the situation. Yeah. And when I coach with clients, I always say that too. It's like they have to be 100% honest with me because then I can't help them. I can't go through this journey with them if they're not honest with me. I do have a little note here to talk about group coaching as well. So not just the Discord, but group coaching is also very good with the accountability as well. So that starts in January.
So we're not enrolling yet, but get on the wait list and then you'll be first.
Get on the wait list. Yep. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about hopelessness because this is something that we both felt sad about.
Yeah.
What was your first kind of thought when you read that?
Well, only because it feels so familiar, right? That feeling of when you don't know what to do and you don't know how to get yourself, as she says, get myself to cooperate. And I love how she says this rogue autopilot. For me, it's a nasty, like angry 6-year-old, like clinging to my neck on my back, like just pounding on my shoulder. Do this, do that, do this, do that. And that's kind of how I envision that horrible feeling of like, I can't get myself to cooperate because there's this voice that I can't, like, you hear people like the advice, well, you got to talk to your inner child or whatever, you got to get that off your back. Well, it's really hard and you never know when, sometimes you don't even know that autopilot is in the, pilot seat. You're not entirely aware that you're being overrun. And that's a difficult and familiar feeling.
Something that hit me too is that I know that one of the reasons you and I started this podcast a long time ago was to inspire people. It was to give people hope. It was to give people strategies and a conversation around ADHD. And so when I saw this, it did make me sad too, because I was like, oh, that's the complete opposite of what our message is. Yeah. And so the one thing that I would say to her and anybody else that feels hopeless is that you just haven't found what works for you yet. There is still a lot of hope. There is still a lot of things. And it's not that it's going to be ever perfect because again, as we were talking at the beginning of the call, the ADHD is there, but it's separate from who you are. And if you can see that and be more forgiving for yourself or more forgiving to yourself, it opens up a different perception of life, right? Like, okay, well, this happened, but I'm not a bad person and I'm going to keep doing the best I can. And you got to check those limiting beliefs. What's that internal conversation that you're having? Is this serving you? If it's not, then how can I switch that? Because I want to be a happy person. I want to see joy. I want to be grateful. We want to keep looking for ideas. Something will click and then you may get bored with it. And guess what? That's okay too. Get bored with it and try something else.
Move on.
move on. So that's the thing is I just, there is so much hope. And there's so many people out there that get you and understand you. You're not alone. And, again, going back to the group of people that can support you makes a big, big difference.
Find the tribe. Find the
tribe. Right.
That's the trick. Well, this is, what a fantastic email to come in. And so I would say first or to wrap up, thank you for trusting us with this particular set of questions and experiences because it's important and it's important to share. And I think that's a big step, is feeling like you can reach into a group of people who are going to understand you for whatever reason, whatever shared experience. But that's us, and we sure appreciate you trusting us to be able to talk about it on this show. Thank you very much for letting us share it with this community. Jump into Discord, make that happen, find your tribe. I think that's all we've got. And sign up for group coaching. It's totally great. That's it. Thanks everybody for downloading and listening to this show. We sure appreciate your time and your attention. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next week right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.